Hey everybody, today is April 3rd, 2026, and you're listening to the While We Still Can podcast, where we talk about local Missouri news, national news, and whatever it is we feel like talking about. I'm Lisa.
I'm Tina.
And I'm Ed.
And this is Ed. Oh, yeah, I was going to introduce you, Ed, but you came in hot like a true trial lawyer there that you are. We have Ed here. I found Ed on TikTok. I love his style of sharing videos. It's my favorite. But Ed is a trial defense lawyer that worked for the corporate world, and he's worked on a bunch of campaigns. And he has a long political history. So we thought that his niche of understanding what really goes on in the courts and everything could really help educate us around here about the true nature of things going on and maybe a little bit what we can do about it, if anything.
Great. I'm happy to help in any way or be elucidating if possible.
Just give us all the info. Okay, Ed, so how did you get interested in, well, I guess, how did you come to TikTok and start putting your videos there? Like, what happened on the news that made you be like, I'm getting on TikTok?
Well, let's go back. I've never been able to stand Donald Trump. And my view goes back to long before he was president. And I had an office in New York for a while with good friends who were lawyers in New York that expressed the same view that I did, that they thought he was a terrible human being. This goes back, I think, when he was dating or fooling around with Marla Maples. So I've never had a good impression of the guy. And he always struck me as somebody who was only interested in himself, but some of the country obviously didn't agree with that in 2016, so he was elected. I didn't think he did much, and I became more alarmed as time went on, particularly since he's been reelected in 2024. So, as you had said, I had done a lot of political work over the years. Was an advance man for President Nixon's campaign. I did the same for the first President Bush, H.W., and also for the Sun, where I went up to New Hampshire to help with that campaign at the last stage of it, and worked for other local politicians in and around Western Pennsylvania. I started off as a conservative Republican. I probably still am, but I'm not sure what that means today. And then a good friend of mine in England who was with Her Majesty's Diplomatic Service and I were talking a number of years ago. He was on the conservative side, and we were talking about leaving, that the parties had sort of left us behind in some way. So I made the decision at the time, and he did as well, to leave the party and become an independent. I'm not a Democrat. I have probably old-fashioned Republican views. I strongly believe in a balanced budget. I believe in equality of opportunity for people, and I believe respect for other people's views. I believe we have a position in the world that creates great responsibility for what we do.
Right.
So that's what that's when all this started in I guess really in 2025. Well, it really started on January 6th. I mean, that was pretty appalling.
God, I know.
But I don't like the thought of sitting around and doing nothing and just bemoaning the fact about this. So I'm a great believer that of the First Amendment, whether I like it or not,
right.
It's a different question. But I decided to give voice to what I was thinking and try and do it reasonably succinctly, because I think that there are a lot of number of people that are afraid to speak up or can't or don't know how to, and that's not. It's what I did for a living, was talking to juries and talking to people. So I thought I might have something, not so much to add, but at least to give people a sense of relief that somebody is doing this and that they shouldn't be afraid to do it on their own. So that's what started this, and almost every day, these clowns give me another opportunity to say something else.
One of the first thing that comes to my mind, Ed, is I'm curious how you feel about, and please forgive me if I use the wrong terminology because I don't know the first thing about law, but it sounds like some of the, like Trump trying to corner his adversaries, past and present, and the Department of Justice failing to get true bills, like to get grand juries to bring people forward for an indictment. It sounds, from what I've read, that's extraordinarily unusual.
Well, it is. The old expression was, and it's been used on some of the television shows, that if you're a prosecutor and you go to a grand jury, you could indict a ham sandwich.
Right.
And the idea behind that is really that you're presenting evidence only on one side. You're presenting it as favorably to the government's position as you can, and there's nobody to oppose it. So that for Trump and the Department of Justice to try and indict people, whether you like them or not, it's a different question, and have grand juries say we're not going to do it. It's sort of a stunning development as they've refused to indict time and time again.
Yeah.
So it's and then you hear about, well, he was persecuted by this person or that person. Well, it's like the rape case by the woman up in New York, whose name escapes me at the moment. It went to a jury. So if you believe in
I
the
know.
jury, then it's the result that a jury of his peers found.
The E.G. Carroll case.
Carroll. Yeah.
So it's sort of stunning. It's stunning that he's trying to do it. It's equally, it's comforting that the grand juries and the judges are pushing back.
Yeah, it feels like they're, the part of our system, the part of our institutions that haven't failed yet. The people on a grand jury.
Well, it's people on the grand jury, and for the most part, the judges. Now, I can't. Mm-hmm. I'm not I did a lot of appellate work, but not like in front of the Supreme Court. So they're very sophisticated people. They're very bright people. I can't comment on the rationale for the decisions. I don't like the idea that a president is given absolute immunity while he's in office for whatever he does that is allegedly related to his office. But for the most part, the judicial system is held firmly against Trump, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I thought that was a stunning finding, personally, because, it seemed like at one point after January 6th, when the impeachment was happening, the Republicans' argument was that, we don't need to impeach him. He's going to be out of office. He can be held accountable in another way. And then when he got out of office, it's, well, he's not president anymore. So it's like whichever side they were on, they were just making excuses to let it go.
Flip-flop. Yeah.
Well, I think that's right. And they were more concerned about a base. I had said the first time around when it came out, his comments about women, that if I had been in charge of the Republican Party, I would have simply said, on a matter of principle, we're not going to support somebody who talks this way about people. Yeah. I think your elected representatives should be somebody you look up to. That you can sit and say to your children, we want you to look like this. Now, everybody has faults, so it's a little bit naive to think that, but I think for the most part, they should be people of some degree of
respect
and character, and I think Trump has none of it.
None.
And I think no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't see any, and I don't see that he has anybody that he surrounds himself with that has any of these qualities, and we can talk about this more as we go along. But I think it's true. I mean, Epstein is one example, but I think that the money that they're stealing from us and trading stocks and all that is wrong.
Yeah, it's all a grift. It makes me wonder, one of the things we've revisited on through the years is the fact that there's so many people that were adamantly against Donald Trump at one point in time and then made a, 180 and or after January 6th were very critical and then 180'd. And when I think about what must be happening to them to make statements like they did and then backtrack so severely. I mean, I'm not saying I know one way or another, but I feel like they're either threatened, something extraordinary has to have happened to these people to get them to behave this way. And I hope I live long enough to find out what it was.
Well, I think it's, the old expression, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that you've got people that love the sense of power. They love the sense that they're in control. And we were talking about this, I guess, yesterday a little bit. That my wife has been bored to tears for years with my saying, I think we're reliving the 1930s. And that I think that Russia is taking the place of Germany. China is taking the place of Japan. And the United States, I view, is taking the place of Italy because it's run by, I view, as sort of a buffoon. And that time will come. But if you take a look, the 1930s were not a pleasant time. There was obviously the Depression, but you had the American Firsters led by Lindbergh. They were very anti-Semitic. They were anti-black. You had Henry Ford, who was anti-Semitic. I don't know his views on black people or any people of color, but these groups were running wild back then. So I didn't see this as being a whole lot different from the 1930s. You just hope it doesn't end with another world war.
Yeah, he's really trying. He is really trying. He is not wanting us to read through them redacted Epstein files that have his name in it 38,000 times. Like, he really is not wanting that.
Well, I know we'll get back to Epstein, but, today, I mean, he and that idiot Hegseth, who fired the Army Chief of Staff today or last night.
Wait, the George guy.
Yes, Randy George.
Okay.
Is apparently a very well-respected general.
I'm sure.
You don't do that in the middle of a war. It's unheard of. So it would lead me to believe that either one of two things happened. Either George said, I am not going to prosecute a war the way you want to. I'm not putting boots on the ground. We're not prepared for it. We're going to get, I'm not going to let my troops be killed. Or he said, I'm tired of you firing people of color, people of women high up in the military. Hegseth won't even put them up for promotion. And as I understand, General George refused to take them off the list. But you were at work, but apparently one jet plane was shot down today by Iran. The pilot's been recovered. Whoever else was in the plane is on the run. Apparently, there's now stories that another jet was shot down and a helicopter was shot down. So that's the reports I've been reading today. But this is completely contrary to somebody saying we have complete control. They have no ability to attack our planes. And these are people's lives at stake.
Absolutely.
Yeah, people are dying and they're lying about it. And I expected nothing less, but also it still amazes me every time.
Yeah. And we talk about sometimes what a profound disappointment our mainstream media has been, which now that they're, owned by corporate conglomerations and, there's really no responsibility anymore to really bringing the American people the news. It's all about the profit that they're, in my humble opinion, that they're making. It's hard to get good news.
Well, I think it's going back. I mean, this has been true. If we come out of World War II, there are guys like Charles Carroll, but Edward R. Murrow and Walter Cronkite and
Rush Limbaugh.
Well, I don't think Rush was in World War II, but they were news people. They delivered news. They tried to do it unbiasedly, and they had a place in the world. Eventually, the news became the question was, would the corporations spend the money on it? And now you have tech billionaires or trillionaires buying up the news outlets, and they're using them to espouse just a particular point of view. So it's the quality is going down, and I think you get very high quality on Substack with
Independent media. Yeah.
with independent media. The biggest one I think is Midas Touch Network.
Yeah.
But Dan Rather is on almost every day, and
Right.
others that you can trust.
Right.
Well, I feel like back even 20 years ago, and I don't even know if this is necessarily a good thing, but since we had those trusted voices, it seemed like most people lived in a similar reality at least. And right now, everyone is so like echo chambered into their own little areas that they're living in completely different worlds.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's right, but I do think the verdict last week against Meta and Facebook, and then the other one. I think those were bellwether decisions, and I have posted if it gets into another discussion from them, but I think states have a big role to play in this, and because if you look at state constitutions, they have protective powers over people in their state. And I think that they ought to be looking into this on a state level and saying, we're not going to subject our citizens to this stuff. If AI, for example, if somebody's going to put something on Facebook that's AI, I think there should be a little notation at the top.
Absolutely.
AI generated. I think that if you made Facebook and Meta and the rest of them responsible for fake news, I mean, things that aren't true, because I see every day on Facebook somebody had died. They just announced that some sealer had terrible cancer. The guy had died a couple of years ago. I think
just making stuff up.
Yeah, I think if you made them responsible for that, they'd create an algorithm that would take most of it away.
Yeah.
It's
true. They can. They just don't.
No, I think that's right.
Yeah.
So
by design.
I think that's right. I think that's what the jury out in California, the juries out in California said. It was designed that if you look at some of the memoranda that have been quoted, they knew exactly what they were doing, and they wanted to hook teenage kids or younger.
Well, and of course,
sorry.
I'm sorry, Tina. There was a lawsuit. I can't remember who the plaintiff was, but Fox News Fox Channel. Fox's defense was that they're not a news. That any reasonable person wouldn't believe what they were saying on the program. That's a hell of a defense. My God.
I think that was in the case where the company that builds the
Dominion.
voting.
Yeah.
Dominion. Whoever did the voting machines, I think that was their case. And they paid, $870 million or something?
A lot.
Yeah.
And they're still talking shit. God. I'm sorry.
Well,
yeah, it's true.
So, yeah, it's crazy. Well,
I think the interesting thing is it's not. So, for example, the military and going to war. My guess is a pretty fair number of our military, and both my sons serve, are coming from the South. So you all in Missouri probably have a pretty good percentage of young people who are serving in the military. Well, they deserve leadership that's good and knows what they're doing.
Absolutely. That's the least we can ask.
That's right. And they deserve the benefits that come with that. And
yes,
you get this war that's being prosecuted that the Republicans, and I'm never quite sure what the Democratic reaction would be if a Democratic president was doing this, because I think that politics creates strange bedfellows at times, but at least at the moment, it's the Republicans don't do anything to stand up, even for the citizens of their own state. And,
we live in Missouri. We know this, okay?
Yeah.
Well, he says he wants to take away Medicare and Medicaid.
Yeah.
It's outrageous. And it would affect probably your state a lot more than it would affect others.
Oh, yeah. But
the red states love to vote against their best interests here. I'm like, no, I know that you don't think you're on Medicaid, but you are, babe. You're on Medicaid. It's just called something different here. It's called Health Net, but that's Medicaid.
Yeah, part of the problem in Missouri is that, So I'm 52, and I remember when we had I grew up in a rural area where we had 3 channels. We had ABC, CBS,
And NBC.
and NBC, and so we all watched the same news at night. We all had the same group of facts, and then there came a time when all the farmers who were out in their on their tractors and in their cab all day listened to AM radio, and along came Rush Limbaugh, and just a steady state of that, for a couple decades. That's part of why we're in this mess here in Missouri.
And Rush admitted at some point that he wasn't in the news business; he was in the entertainment business.
Absolutely.
From
Absolutely.
that point of view, he did a wonderful job for himself, and I don't say that pejoratively. He made a lot of money and was very well known, and then he tried to translate that into political power, as if he knew how to run something.
Yeah. And then the cable news came along, and now like accuracy is no longer the primary goal. It's get it out there first, get the most clicks, get the most view, and there's not enough news to keep people entertained overnight, but now they have to, because we don't go to the little fuzzy little rainbow, the stripes when they go off the air at night. There is none of that anymore. We're still trying to get make a buck overnight. I think that's, in my jaded opinion, that's where things really started to go south, when the news wasn't for informing people, it was for entertainment.
And for money.
Couldn't put it this way, are you old enough to remember it? At night, they would sign off. They would the American flag and the God bless
Absolutely.
them.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then sometimes they'd say, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are?
That's exactly
And the crazy thing is they didn't. They didn't know where their kids were. They're still outside or over at so-and-so's.
That's exactly right.
Or they're really in a field drinking beer somewhere.
Yeah. I was doing that. Okay.
You weren't alone.
Yeah, no, or hopefully your kids weren't on Epstein Island, speaking of that. So what do you think is going to come out of that, Ed, on a law level here, like on a law? Because as a woman, okay, so my main issue when we were talking about how he talks about women, Donald Trump, when he was first coming into the political arena, and you were like, you can't talk like that about women. So my main issue with him, before I learned more about him, was his obvious disdain for women. And when you saw all the men around you like be super into this guy, it was very hard as a woman to be like, wait, do you feel like that about me? And so I do feel like a lot of divisions started kind of with that, because you can't even verbalize how you're offended in that way, because it's like, oh, you're nice to me, but you are okay with this on this side, and so and then the Epstein stuff coming out and him clearly being implicated. Do you think we're ever going to see anything come out of that?
Let's go back. I think that it's stunning to me that any part of this country would support taking away rights from women. Now, both my boys were adopted. But I happen to feel that, so if they'd been aborted, I wouldn't have had those 2 kids that were wonderful. They caused problems, but at the end of the day, they were great, and they served the country honorably. So I don't think somebody has a right to tell a woman what to do. And that's a change of view for me.
I'm so proud of you.
Thanks. I changed my opinion on that a while ago, as I started to think about it more. I would feel more sympathy for the people who are against abortion if they were paying for health care for women and supporting women through child rearing and all the rest of it. But they don't. So I think the argument is too fake. In any event, you're asking about Epstein more particularly. Let me give you an example from a case I had, and it was really a pretty simple case. So it was a guy who'd fallen allegedly on some ice at work and got hurt and was off work for a while. And I had picked up the case late, right before trial. The corporation wasn't happy with the prior lawyer, so they asked me to to handle the case. And as in and amongst the documents I found on the guy's work history was a statement that he'd given at work that in fact what had happened is he'd fallen at home on his stairs that were icy. But this had not been put forward as a defense exhibit, so it's a little technical. So we're in the trial, and every time I tried to use it, the plaintiff would say, well, wait a minute, he can't use that. He never produced it. And I would ask every witness about it, and they would object, and then they said they wanted an order that I wasn't allowed to ask about it. And the judge said, Mr. Schmidt can ask about it as long as he wants, but I'll keep ruling that he's not allowed to do it. He's got a First Amendment right. So meanwhile, he witness was on the stand, and I go to show him the exhibit, and plaintiff objects again. I think the 12 members of the jury were ready at that point to jump over the railing to see that order, to see that document. And it was a 1.5-page document. And I think that's what's happening with Epstein. If Trump wasn't in it and hadn't done anything wrong,
we would have seen him day one.
You would have seen it, and it was simply embarrassing. So I go back, and I think it was '92. Trump was bailed out of bankruptcy by the Russian oligarchs.
Yep.
And they put money into the Bank of Cyprus, which then lent it to Trump, kept him out of bankruptcy. My belief is, but I have no evidence to sustain it, that they probably have pictures of him with people in Russia and that are compromising at a minimum on that. But at the same time, Epstein, who'd been sort of a low-level stockbroker at Bear Stearns and was let go, and right now I can't remember why, suddenly comes on the scene and it's worth a lot of money. And some of what the documents we're seeing now is they want to know, and the Senator Wyden from Oregon is looking into who paid Epstein all this money, because his trafficking was a worldwide organization. So it wasn't just young women from the United States and maybe even some boys, I don't know, but it was it's around the world. So he's looking into the financial side of it, and I can't keep all these clowns straight. I think it's Dissent, who's the Secretary of Treasury, refused to turn over the financial record.
Tell me you're guilty without telling me you're guilty. Like, we know. No.
View, and then there's questions whether or not this is also tied in to a worldwide drug trafficking ring. And on top of that,
and organ trafficking. Don't forget that.
No, I didn't know about it. Though honestly, I hadn't heard about that. But the drug trafficking explains why Trump has pardoned a whole lot of people.
Maduro.
Well, not Maduro, but
not Maduro. Who was the other guy from Cuba? Hernandez.
He was the head of Nicaragua, and I can't remember his name. Was apparently put 300 million tons of cocaine into this country. Yeah. Was convicted by a federal jury in Florida, and Trump pardons him. He pardoned a number of other drug dealers that were notorious drug dealers. So it sort of fits a pattern, and my guess is he's concerned about that as much as he is, the accusation of raping those young girls.
He's got a lot to be ashamed of.
I think it will come out, and I think that where you're going to start to see significant movement is after the midterm, because I think if the writing on the wall is true and the Democrats control either the House or Senate or both, you'll start to have inquiries and investigations that lead into these things.
Yeah, and we're starting to see a lot of Republicans drop out of their race or retire.
That's right.
So I guess they must know something. But that's assuming we have a fair election. So.
Well, that's true, but I thought that the Senate refused to pass the SAVE Act, and that when the Senate voted unanimously to fund everything except the ICE and the Border Patrol, I thought it was the Senate sending a message that the days of being on the Senate side sycophantic are going to be over.
Yeah,
Because
maybe, like you say, maybe this tide is starting to turn, finally.
I
sure hope so.
I think it is.
Well, there has to be more pressure coming from everyone else than there is coming from Trump, it seems, for them to, because like he's
That's
like,
a good way to put it.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna show them all these videos of you doing weird stuff with kids, and then we're like, no, we're gonna burn you on a stake, you know? And so we gotta figure out which one's scarier. But again, it seems like no one cares about the like pedo stuff. I'm like, no, just let us see the files. No one's doing anything anyways right now. Sorry, I digress. But
No, I don't think it's a digression, but I think that people do care.
They just don't know what to do.
Well, I think that it's up to all of us as you go with the No Kings protest. For example, I was reading an article today. Does it do any good? In one way, the answer is no. But in the other way, it shows that people care about a lot of these things. And that they're not going to stand for people doing nothing. This was not the 1950s and 1960s, where you didn't protest. And, you know, if you protested the Vietnam War, you were accused of being a coward or a commie or something. Those days are gone. And so I think if it was a single instance of misconduct, not that would be any better, but people could potentially look past that. But when you start talking about rings of small children, and there's, the ranch in New Mexico that they're searching. There's stories that Trump and somebody dumped a body up in a lake in Michigan.
Yep. Right. That one was bad.
You know, so these things are out there and they're not going to go away. And I'm surprised that more things have not leaked out of the FBI, Department of Justice, because I think that the people, the career civil servants, have got to be getting very tired of this.
Absolutely.
And I would think
that's one question I have is why, as more becomes apparent, one has to assume that some of this has been common knowledge among those folks for a long time. And I find it disappointing that we got to this far without anybody else bringing it to light. Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I think that if you look at the people Trump surrounds himself with, who are mentioned in the Epstein files, there's Trump, there's Dershowitz, there's Scott Bessent, who is it? Sign of getting old. Who said, well, he met him once and he was so disgusted by him that.
Lutnick.
That was
Lutnick.
Howard Lutnick.
And I think Whitcroft. They're all mentioned in the Epstein files. Now, the telling point of what Lutnick said is he only met him once and he was so disgusted by what he saw, he never saw him again. Well, we know that's a lie, but it tells you that if you met the guy and other than in a setting with normal people, you would be disgusted by what you're hearing and what you're seeing. So people should have said something.
Absolutely.
And then you get to Trump's lying where he said, well, there was a memo created in 2019. Well, let me back up for a second. When I talked about the drugs, there was an investigation in the Southern District of New York into the drug dealing with Epstein. Trump shut that down in 2019. And there's apparently an 86-page report that they're keeping under seal for that. So that I look at all this coming together, but I think that these people who were there a number of times, you'd have to wonder why they didn't say something to somebody. These are kids. It's not like they're with, people who are old enough to know better. These are kids that have been
little kids.
That's
like
right.
There are little kids in there.
Yeah, I'm assuming, and again, I wasn't there, but it feels like they've compromised these folks. Like they brought them to a situation that they thought was benign, and then something happened, and now there's
it's like what
evidence of
P.
them
Diddy
doing
did.
something illegal. Yeah. And so now they can either have that spilled, hypothetically, or they can support, they can toe the line. But that's an awful lot of people to have to compromise. My goodness.
Well, I think there are a lot of high-level people that have been involved in this. My guess is there are people on both sides of the aisle.
Absolutely.
You know it. You know it.
But I don't believe for a minute that Joe Biden was involved in this.
I don't think so
I
either.
would be shocked if that.
I'd have lunch one day. I mean, perfectly affable. There'd be no reason he wouldn't have been, but things like this never.
Your intuition didn't tell. Like, I see Trump on TV and I'm like, oh no, he is a creep. Like, I would never let my daughter be around him. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Tina. And I think a lot of women especially have that intuition that when they meet somebody that's a creep, they feel it. They just know.
Well, there's a movie, I think it's called 1 Hour or The Hour, about the woman who was on the dating game. And she was selected. Turns out the guy who was on the show was a serial killer, and she refused to go out with him just based upon a feeling. And,
it's a thing.
Intuition's a powerful thing.
That's exactly right, and it's there for a reason.
Well, and that's why, and I get so upset when people, again, okay, and I'm not going to say everybody at all. I know people care, but a lot of them, when they're presented with this information about any of these things, they are like, well, that's just how it is. And my brain cannot, like, wait, what?
You'd think not only would the populace say we want something better, we deserve something better, but you'd think that the Republican Party would sit there and say, this is sufficiently disgusting, but we're not going to put up with this. The same way.
Or let this take us down. Or Christianity as a whole, Like, what are we doing?
As what somebody who started as a conservative, what becomes more troublesome to me is I think they'll go down in the fall, and I think that the White House will be lost, and we'll have a much more liberal or progressive, however you want to put it, political system for years, and not a viable two-party system. So I think he's going to be an anchor around the Republicans for years.
So what?
Not having stood up to him.
So I know I'm squirreling here and going off in all different directions, but if I don't get it out, I'll forget. So if going up to the midterms, which I'm trying to not have any negativity on how that might turn out, because it seems like since it's elections are state run, even though they really are trying to get them voter rolls and stuff. I know they've already gerrymandered our state in the middle of a 10-year like our Constitution says it has to be on a census year, and they did it in the middle of a census change, and it's the second one they've done in this past 10 years, not a census year. And what if they try to pull some stops as far as elections goes, like I know they would like to have ICE in there, like it says it in Project 2025, pretty much everything they're going to try to do. What do we do as citizens to combat that?
I think that's a good question. I think there are a couple things. First, it's not clear to me that this is going to work for them. Because if you look at the redistricting in Texas and the way that voting is being
it backfired, didn't it?
It has backfired, and it might backfire spectacularly in Texas and elsewhere because, although I disagree violently or vehemently with the people who voted for Trump, they can't be so stupid as to think that $4, $5, $6 gasoline is what they voted for, what they wanted, or the farmers in Iowa, South Dakota.
I know.
So But I assume the states are prepared. The attorney generals, at least in the blue states, are prepared with court to go to court immediately to get injunctions against ICE and people with weapons being anywhere around the polling place. The question would be, and then I assume somebody's preparing a lawsuit if Trump says there's a national emergency and he's calling off the elections because of a war he started, that that somebody's preparing an injunction for that as well. I mean, we had, as Europe was going to hell in 36, we had an election, and 40 and 44 we had elections, throughout the World War II is my point. But I think that the answer is just continue to stand up for what our rights are.
Yeah. Well, and elections are a state-run function, so hopefully if he quote unquote demanded they be postponed or canceled, hopefully they would just ignore him because that's not a legal thing.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, he has no right to do it. So
absolutely not.
So if somebody doesn't want to vote, and I don't know how Texas, for example, could avoid it because they've just redistricted. So they would be losing just on the face of it if they didn't vote. They're losing what they tried to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a concern, but I don't spend too much time.
We're just going to have to find out. Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Tina.
No, you're good.
I'm concerned about the military in general terms. If it's led by Trump's sycophants, and just like General George just got dismissed or asked to resign or whatever, how far can that go before, the most powerful military in the world is up to no good? I mean, I have faith in the everyday member of our military to recognize what's illegal and not do that. But still, it's the fact that we have to be in that position is abhorrent.
Well, we shouldn't have to worry. I mean, you're 100% right. We shouldn't have to worry about it. And they hopefully, well, not hopefully. I mean, my understanding is that General Kane, who is head of the military, that he told Trump, "Don't go into Iran. Don't do this." There are a lot of problems with it, and a lot of the military have taken that position. So I generally used to think leaking was a bad thing. I think that what you're seeing is those leaks coming out, and both sides of the aisle have been very upset with these briefings that they've had because it's clear that they have no plan. Trump wants to go in and bomb people and kill people with no idea the damage he's doing to the rest. Well, it's not only just damage to the Middle East. China is a huge beneficiary of what he's doing.
Right.
They look more stable and sensible than we do. And he's about to lose, I think, a lot of his allies in the Middle East because they're getting bombed.
Absolutely.
So I would hope the military would do the right thing and just say we're not obeying any orders to do anything else.
Yeah, including domestic.
Particularly domestic. They're not allowed to.
Yeah.
Well, but they're not really following rules, and waiting. It's like they're not asking permission. They're doing and asking forgiveness or hoping no one does.
I don't think the military, I think that the admiral, whoever it was, who was retired, was not convinced that the bombings of the Venezuelan fishing boats was a legitimate campaign, and he left. And I think I would surmise that he left because he thought it was an illegal order.
Proud of him.
That's right. And as I understand, we have teams now in Ecuador allegedly going after drug dealers. You would hope at some point the higher ups would say we're not going to put our people at risk for that because we're fighting wars. This is a guy who wanted the Nobel Peace Prize.
He stopped 11 wars, Ed. Come on.
I
he's
stopped
a
every
peace president.
Every time my wife goes to war with me, I stop it by pretending I'm
Right.
asleep.
I am the ultimate conflict resolution.
That's right.
So when I look at all of the things that is happening and the choices that the administration is making, the conclusion that I come to a lot of the time is the point is to burn it, to take our standing away as a superpower, to break it. And I can't tell if him trying to, because it doesn't make sense. You don't have a plan. What do we talk? What? We don't have a plan? Like, and it seems like the plan is to break it.
You want to hear my tinfoil hat theory about that?
I forgot my tinfoil hat. I have one.
Yeah. And I don't think this is going to happen, but I think if you're Donald Trump and you have no knowledge, no sense, no economic basis, no shame, no sense of honor, all you know is what these fools are telling you, then if you think that you can tank the dollar and switch over to some cryptocurrency that you're in on the baseline of or the ground floor of, and you and all your buddies will get rich, tanking the dollar sounds like a pretty good idea.
I wonder. It's an interesting theory. So I have a good friend in England who had been part of the intelligence community over there and in the Royal Navy, and we go back and forth. He's more conservative than I am, and we just engaged in lengthy emails over the last several days about what I thought Trump was up to in Iran, because he had originally postulated that it was really an attempt to disrupt China because Iran supplies a lot of oil to China, and if you disrupt Cuba and Venezuela, it has a dramatic effect on China, and could be, so that he was playing a more sophisticated game. I don't think that's what's going on. I'm not sure Trump has the brains to do that.
Yeah.
I think Trump views himself as a powerful guy that makes hard decisions, and that's what he likes to think. He's making hard decisions without any idea of what solutions are. So that if you look at his track record, every business but the real estate business, which I assume in New York is pretty rough and tumble, ended up in bankruptcy. So
I know.
Well, and that was probably because of Russian money. We know that.
Well, yeah, and they, so that he's never built anything. He's expanded his father's business, but he never built anything. And all that he and his kids are interested in are money. And one of the other points I wanted to mention, going back to Epstein for a minute, but don't forget he had a couple, I think they were Miss Teenage or a couple modeling agencies where they brought, a couple ones where the people had been, no question, running against sex rings out of them.
Yep.
So my assumption is that those businesses
he had his own.
Pretty dirty. That's right. They're pretty dirty businesses.
Yeah.
So
like
they're not
Jean-Luc Brunel or folks like that.
Yeah. John Casablancas. Yep.
That's right.
Well, and it's funny. I remember being a young girl, and you would go to the mall back in the 90s, and they'd be like, "Hey, girl, you got the look," and I'm like, "Not me," but okay. But that was what that was. It was literally, oh, that girl does not have a mom with her. We're going to tell her she looks like a model. And then you go to this little strip mall and get your photos taken, and you fly to Jeffrey Epstein's island. I'm not kidding. This is how it used to go. And sure Trump has his own agencies.
But on the good side, at least somebody told you got the look. I don't think anybody ever told me I had to look for anything. So.
I think they were talking to my sister behind me or something, because
Well, people used to ask me who I got in courtrooms, and I said I was always looking for like a trial lawyer, hottie or something. But all I got was either bag people trying to get warm or older people that thought trials were more interesting than afternoon TV. So.
Right. Then an episode of Young and the Restless. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Tina, you're so cute. You totally could have been a yacht girl.
No, not. Listen, I have questions though. I need to know where we're going, what time we're going to be there, when we're going to be back, who's going to be there. So they would bring me back.
I was going to say that you were only a spectrum disorder away from being on Epstein Island, but that
I was a little too spicy.
As mean,
too many questions.
I shouldn't joke about that stuff, but there's nothing funny about it. But
we like to laugh at the morbid here at the While We Still Can pod. We laugh so we don't cry.
Good point.
So, what do you think is going to be the outcome of Israel?
Oh wow!
Sorry, did we?
Tough question.
No, that's a good question. I think Netanyahu is as bad as they come, and I think that I understand the reaction to the October 7th massacre and the reaction to it. I think that it's been an overkill, and the question that always has to be asked at the end of the day, 20 years from now, you're creating more harm than good. So that, for example, how many more terrorists have you created in Gaza by destroying essentially everything? And again, that's something that Trump says, and Jared Kushner says, well, we'll turn it into a jewel of the Mediterranean. Well, how would whether you
they're
like
hotels.
It's people's homes.
They don't care though. I'm glad you brought up Jared Kushner because
he's a turd.
He seems like the brains behind a lot of these operations just for sheer profit.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you have to look, I think they've been, and I don't know if they've been intentionally played, but that's the conclusion I would come to by Putin and Russia. They don't even they don't take people from the State Department to go to those meetings. And at least the government of Oman had said that at the last meeting with Kushner and with Nitwitkoff, as I call him.
Yes.
Iran had agreed to a number of things the United States wanted. Whether that's true, I obviously have no independent way of knowing, but it seems to me that they're only interested in money, and it's suspicious that he was given $2 billion to invest by the Saudis.
Absolutely. With the Khashoggi situation.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that I think they're all just interested in money, and he and Witkoff and Trumps are all in business together, and I think it shows Trump's interest. So when your question is is Trump trying to destroy the dollar? Somebody else might have that thought. I think Trump's trying to be a strong man of the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, the New World Order vibe. Now I really need my hat.
Right. And I'm not sure. Well, that's one time I called my son. I said, "You've got a problem." I said, "What?" He said, "What's that?" I said, "Well, I got out of the shower and I was cleaning my ear with a Q-tip." And I said, "Then I went to put my shirt on, and I realized I forgot to take the Q-tip out of my ear." He said, "Dad, that's not so bad. That's happening." I said, "No, the problem is I really thought that's how I tuned the radio." My version of the tinfoil hat.
Yep.
Nice.
But again, as far as the tinfoil hat goes, I have gotten such good use out of this because literally we always talk about our sponsors should be Reynolds Wrap because every conspiracy theory is freaking coming true. So I don't even know.
Well, you guys are too young. There used to be so I grew up at a young age listening to things on the radio, like the Lone Ranger and whatever was on. But there were big concerns about spacecraft and aliens from outer space.
It's making a comeback.
And whether or not, what'd you say?
It's making a comeback. It's all coming back.
I know, and that the J.D. Vance is looking into that.
Yes, he is.
People used to go around, some people, they'd have pictures of them wearing those tinfoil hats because it would keep the brainwaves from being
that's funny.
To the Martians or somebody.
I've become a little obsessed just here in the last couple weeks with all these folks that have disappeared or
Well, that is interesting. The 8 scientists who
yeah,
disappeared.
the
Yeah,
dude from MIT that was just he was shot in his own home, and these folks walking off on walks never to be seen again.
yeah, that's
Again,
interesting. I
I
don't know
hope I
what.
live long enough to see why.
Yeah, and I hope you're not one of them. No, that's interesting. I've been reading about that and have no.
Mm.
I don't even have a theory on that. I'm not a big conspiracy theory person, but you are.
Well,
Put that back in
welcome.
there.
We'll get you your own tinfoil hat just for
We'll
fun.
Welcome
send
to
you a thank you, and we'll
Yeah.
send you your foil hat, handcrafted
Thank
by
you
you.
go.
me.
Very
Some
nice.
origami there for us.
Yes.
But that it does feel like, and I don't know, who knows what the deal is, but statistically, to have that many people have some type of an adverse event in the same small community seems odd at best.
Yeah, and I can't. I mean, it's just something I've read the stories that somebody's disappeared. They have no clue. They started to see more of these. The guy up in MIT, and I can't remember. Was there somebody else killed, and then they went up and they killed the fellow up in MIT, and they thought it was just sort of a random killing.
I
Uh-huh.
thought maybe was it
A guy
somebody
got
in Europe?
shot. What?
I want to say like the fusion is coming to mind. And like somebody
Fusion?
that was associated with fusion, but I thought it was not in the United States. And then this gentleman got killed.
No, it was in the United States, but then
Was it?
they were all working. So one guy was working on fusion technology that was going to make energy like free, like we didn't need oil and stuff, and he was working on that. And then the other guys were working on a certain type of metal that was like indestructible. I thought.
Yeah, as
Maybe
I say, I know snippets of what I've read, and
Mm-hmm.
it's come out more. You see the 1 or 2 more articles since Savannah Guthrie's mother was kidnapped, and
Oh yeah.
about the fellow 1 or 2 people out in New Mexico. So
Yes.
you tend to think they're not random, but until somebody tells me otherwise, I'm not going to bite yet. Maybe Trump stole them all. But I will say the other interesting question that is coming up is that, and I never believed this, is the death of Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
that's-
no.
Yeah. Yeah.
The videos from the jail would lead you to believe at least that something very suspicious was going on. And I think
Mhm.
that there was an FBI document, or maybe it was a coroner's document, that we don't think that this death is.
Yeah. It was an independent autopsy. His
Yes,
brother
consistent with
had
the-
it redone. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, although that's always, when somebody wants to go in and question it, I mean, that doesn't make it right. It's just another piece of evidence.
Right, another opinion, differing at least.
Yeah.
Like maybe we need a third, But
Yeah.
I don't think it was him either. What, those 3 minutes that he got killed were just gone and the people were asleep. That's just like, all the papers being redacted and Trump not being in there. Like I'm not, like I was born at night, not last night.
Well, and Bill Barr was in charge, so who knows what he was up to.
Yeah,
Bill Barr
although
was Attorney General then.
I mean, I thought that Barr's worst comment when he said Trump had been exonerated by Mueller, which he clearly wasn't.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
No,
thought
I
that was
don't. They
considerable,
still say it.
but otherwise, I had I didn't get the impression that Barr was doing anything illegal. But somebody else might have a different opinion
Yeah.
on that. But it's more like the Rosemary Woods erasing of some of the Nixon tapes allegedly by mistake.
Well, two things about that. One, if the people of the United States, the citizenry, had read the document, they could have seen through that because that's clearly not what it said. And number two, again, the media dropped the ball. Because if the media had just made a statement saying, well, this is what the Attorney General said, but here's what the document says, it's not
The same
it doesn't
thing.
align. It's
Yeah.
right. But none of that happened, and nobody read it, and so people just go on thinking that was the truth, but it just wasn't. It wasn't an accurate representation of what that found.
No, and they talked about a number of meetings between the Trump campaign and Russian people, Russian operatives, and then you have uh, Judge Cannon down in Florida protecting the second part of the Smith report.
How do you feel about that? Those shenanigans that she's pulled.
I was giving her. She's young. She had no trial experience. I thought she had no business being appointed to the federal bench because generally those judges are very good people and they're very bright people. And I mean, even state, I'm not distinguishing them from state judges, but I did a lot of work in federal court. But I thought it became clear to me she was doing what she could to protect Trump. And I think it's dead wrong that there are high questions of treason that the public ought to have access to, and if Trump has an answer, give him an answer. But he's willing to blast he and his minions are willing to blast Jack Smith. I think that Smith's report ought to come out and see what he says about Trump.
Yes, and no one's even going to okay, I'm being negative. I'm not going to be negative. But I am so amazed. Like, how much of what is going on in Iran right now do you think we sold the nuclear secrets for? You know, like, I mean, what can you come up with one good reason he would have had all those boxes?
Well, I question whether or not he was giving some of those secrets to Russia. The story came out, and there are two parts to that. One story came out the other day is he was using all those documents to further his own business interests in places around the world.
Yeah, Pam Bondi spilled those beans.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, but keep in mind there's a whistleblower complaint that was filed or sent to Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence. There's an oxymoron.
I know, right? God.
But that apparently they had intercepted communications of Russians talking about somebody very close to Trump, and I assume they were talking about that person as either as an asset or as a source. And Tulsi Gabbard has put that inside a safe, not to be seen by anybody, including the congressional committees that are entitled to it. Now, I think on the Jack Smith report, I assume that's been appealed. I think that's the Fifth Circuit, maybe the 11th, but I don't remember now. I think it's the Fifth Circuit. But anyway, and so that court might reverse Judge Cannon and make that public, which I'd like to see. And I don't know where the whistleblower complaint to Tulsi Gabbard is procedurally at the moment.
Well, she'll probably, next week will be her week because he's kicking all the women out. So, like, we got Noam out, we got Bondi out, which also, Bondi, someone needs to call her and tell her, like, girl, you got the goods. They kicked you out, and no, you know all of it. Spill it, babe. Let's go. Pammy, come on.
Well, it's a good question. Actually, the more interesting question, I don't think she'll do that because I think
she's a wimp
herself. But I think
absolutely
who would want to take that position?
Nobody in their right mind.
As Attorney General, under the present circumstances and knowing how mercurial Trump is and what you're going to be asked to do.
Yeah. Well, there's a rumor that Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt is a candidate.
He's totally all up in Trump's. He loves him. He's been
practicing for this role for quite some time.
Oh, is that right? He's one of the senators?
Yeah.
They're both terrible.
Well, the other
we've
question...
got him and we've got
Hawley.
Josh Hawley, yeah.
Was his grandfather, great-grandfather, a senator in Missouri? There was a Hawley years ago.
Not that I recall, but I'll Google it
while
we
talk.
talk.
Been before all of our times. So he does not come from a long-term political family? I've been meaning to
try to... I try to know the least amount about Josh Hawley that I can know.
We did have Jay Ashcroft he was John Ashcroft's son, and he he has tried and failed at politics here in Missouri for quite some time.
Wasn't Ashcroft, wasn't John Ashcroft, wasn't he well thought of?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, he makes an appearance, and I mean, in today's day and age, with what we have to work with now, he was an extraordinarily upstanding guy. At the time, he seemed, a little far right, but yeah, I think he was a a person that
was
cared
an
a lot
old
about the
school.
United States of America, and he
An
did
old
what he
school
could.
conservative, like you said you
Yeah.
probably were, Ed.
Yeah, and that you can deal with people of honor. And people
Yes.
understand politics
Yeah.
is the art of compromise.
And I can respect you. It's like I cannot respect these people at all. Like I have zero respect for these offices that I once used to have respect for, even if we had a disagreement about policy.
I think he made an appearance in Jim Comey's book. Am I remembering this accurately? He was in the hospital with pancreatitis, Attorney General Ashcroft. And there were documents that needed to be re-signed that had to do with treatment of, I guess, torture, basically. And they were trying to, Bush Cheney was, I think, trying to get him to sign these documents so they could continue on the status quo, and he didn't do it.
Ashcroft, yes.
I remember that story.
They turned it into a dramatic moment, like he was up on his elbow in his hospital bed. Like, anyway, and they called to warn. Somebody called his wife and said, "Hey, these guys are on their way over. They're going to try to get him to sign this. Don't let him do it." And now that just seems adorable with all the crap we have to deal with now. Yeah.
Oh, God.
So far we've come.
Well, the other question is that maybe for another day is what we would do to fix. It is clear the laws need to be changed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, the first one I would have a law that within 30 days of taking any federal public office, you have to turn your investments over to an independent investment advisor that will deal with it, and you don't have the choice of doing or talking about. That's the first thing I would do to start to restore public trust.
Yep.
Because I think everybody looks at the politicians as they're all crooked and they suddenly make a lot of money.
Absolutely. Both sides of the aisle. 100%.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That would be the first.
Yes. You know what? I think we should do a second episode at some point if you would be open to that, and we should talk about solutions.
I would love that. Have we been talking for over an hour? Oh, my word.
Well, I've probably talked too much, but
No, not at all.
I think that it's easy to talk about the problem.
Yeah.
Then the question is, what are the solutions that you would do, and then how many of the problems that Trump is creating are going to take years to undo?
Absolutely. Next time I'd like to ask you what you think about the Supreme Court and where we are and what we could do down the road.
Well,
if that's for next episode, because it's a long answer, that's cool too. We want to respect your time.
Another episode, but I think I'm a great believer of balancing things out so you get different viewpoints. I mean, I'm sorry I had African American friends, black friends who I played football with, and baseball with, but I probably never got enough of view of their life to really understand their point of view. And it's tragic. It's like because I probably have more empathy now than I did then, because I didn't ask. I was busy creating my own life and doing what I was.
And also, I think our historical education did us a disservice, because a lot of the systemic issues that roll forward that affect, people of color, we were never educated about.
Oh, I think that's absolutely right. And so that you don't understand it. And there's a wonderful book. There's two books. One is called A Difficult Conversation with a Jew. and the other is A Difficult Conversation with a Black Man. And it's and they're literally they're books that are very thin. They're maybe, I don't know, 80, 90, 110 pages long, something like that. And the guy who asked the questions and then involved in the discussions is a fellow. He was, I think, from Ethiopia or someplace, that grew up in, I think, Dallas, Texas, ended up playing professional football. He was a commentator on ESPN, and then he got into this business. So they give you, they're books that are, I think, they're tremendous books in an encapsulated form that tell you how different people view things, and why it's okay for a black man to use the N-word, but nobody else. I mean,
Right.
he gets into his questions and answers get into all this and a lot of different viewpoints from those two minority groups. So I think those. I think his name is Achu or ACHU or ECH, something like that. But those are the two books that he's had out that I think give you a very wonderful perspective, albeit limited. But to say I can say in candor, I'm more attuned to that now than I was at the time, because these were the friends who happened.
Emmanuel H.O. Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. So if you have the time,
I'm proud of you, Ed. I'm proud of you for that. That's work. No, I'm serious. I am serious.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll leave you with this. So I like, most of my reading is history and biography.
Me too.
And but the histories of women in World War II are stunning. And they started to come out after the movie Hidden Figures.
Oh.
But most of the major spy rings were run by women.
Yeah.
There's one called, I gave a talk to a women's book club about this. I read about maybe 15 books about women in the war, and some was before the war. But the one was called Woman of No Importance. I think she grew up in Maryland, lost part of her leg in a hunting accident in Connecticut, went to Britain and she headed up a major.
I've read that book.
And she ended up having to escape over the Pyrenees with a fake leg, and she couldn't tell the people that she had a fake leg because she was afraid they wouldn't take her. And she made it, got back to Great Britain, was hired by the OSS, which became the CIA, and they put her in an analyst job, and she's done more than any of the men involved.
Yep, I read that story about the girl with one leg.
Yeah.
And there's another book called The Code Breaker. So
yeah, it's a terrific book.
Have you read that? Yeah, and the women were great. And I went this winter to Bletchley Park in England. I've not been to the campus that they created for the women in either Arizona or not Arizona. I mean, either Virginia or Maryland, I think, right outside Washington. But it's a wonderful book, and those women were paid exactly one half of what the men were paid.
Yeah, that's a classic tale. Yeah.
Well, it opens your eyes if they weren't open before to the inequalities that people have been talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the pain that people are having right now is they're being forced to go outside their own brains and walk in somebody else's shoes. That's what this time is helping everybody learn, whether they want to or not.
Yeah,
well,
I'll leave with this. I mean, you have people that transgender, for example, which became a flashpoint of whatever it's called.
They're political footballs at this point.
That's right.
People that just want to be left alone.
But you sit there and I say to somebody, what do you care? I mean, what harm is that if that person dyes their purple hair orange and a man is transformed into the body of a woman? What do I care? I mean, do I think my children were going to take a look at that and say, the
That looks like an easy path to walk in life.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Just sit there and say, why are you so excited about this? What is it that why do you, I mean,
why do you care? How do you even have time to care?
How is it affecting your life?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it affects my life because I care about women's sports so much. So do you go?
Since when, right? Since
do
when?
do you attend the women's sports?
That's a really good
it's
point, Ed.
ridiculous.
I'm actually going to be using that one. Thank you.
Well, and especially if you're a true at heart libertarian, you're going to say, hey, that individual needs to be left alone to do what they want with their body.
Well, that's right. Then listen, if it doesn't, I remember the only time that I was with somebody who was not only transgender, no, not transgender, cross-dressing. I mean, a guy dressed as a woman, whatever.
Yeah, drag queen.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called, but he wanted to be referred to as they.
Uh-huh.
And this I really don't understand. I mean, it's a word.
It's hard. It's hard to do.
But I felt like asking, do you get 2 votes? I mean, that's a form. I just don't quite understand it. But again, it doesn't adversely impact my life. I just have to remember to call somebody they if that's, they might think my name is odd.
Well, my big concern about the situation is that, that because these trans Americans are just being treated terribly right now as political football, and it puts them in danger, and that's not right. And this issue is something that most people never have to think about because there just aren't that many trans people in the world that we are aware of. Now, the caveat there is that, for people in older generations, they're like, well, when I was a kid, nobody was transgender. Well, guess what? Yes, they were. They had to conform to society lest they be so, ridiculed or their lives were threatened. Many people committed or died by suicide. It's not that transgender people didn't exist. They just weren't in your sphere.
Well, that's right. Look at Alan Turing after World War II. They chemically castrated the guy and he committed suicide.
Who is that?
Alan Turing.
Yeah.
Who helped with the Enigma code.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's shameful.
It is. And that's part of our history that we never learned. We never were, can't learn from it because we didn't know. But now we know better, so we ought to do better. And absolutely, I hope these elections go the right direction in the fall so that transgender people can be left alone a little bit more than they would be otherwise.
Yeah, people just leave people alone. That's it. That's what I should run on.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm going to
do. If it doesn't hurt me, why do I care?
Yeah, why do you care? Why do you care?
I remember saying to my boys that when they were, I don't know, young teenagers, I said, I want you to know, now, nobody has ever viewed me as being liberal. So that except now,
yeah, you big lib.
I'm
kidding. I'm kidding, Ed. I'm kidding.
It came from, I'll tell you a story and then I'll stop boring you, but the boys were in the car one day and one of them said to me, I think I'm going to grow my hair long. I said, well, that's fine. I just hope you keep it neat and clean. So all this is a test. And then one said, I think I'm going to dye my hair orange. And the other said, I'm going to dye my hair green. I said, well, that's fine. But keep in mind that clubs I belong to, I'm not going to take you if you look like that. But if you don't care, that's perfectly fine with me. And one said, I think I'm going to get an earring. I said, you get an earring, I'll buy you a dress. So they knew that we were only going so far with it. So then it was probably a year or two later, I pulled them aside. I said, I want you to know something. I said, notwithstanding what your impression is of me, if you were gay, I said, I would love you every bit as much as I love you now. So I just don't want you to think any of my jokes or comments about this would impact the way I feel about you. And that's what, I mean, I can't imagine how you would feel if you were a parent and your son or daughter said,
you
put a different body or I'm transsexual or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. You can put yourself in the shoes and it brings a whole new light to it. So,
well, I can certainly ignore it because it doesn't affect my life. And I don't mean ignore it in a bad way. I mean, but you know,
Well, good for you for speaking up though, because
and men listen to other men.
If they sure do. If we ignore it to the point where we don't even comment when we hear ridiculousness out in the world, then we're just as bad, you know.
Oh no, that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Right.
You're right.
Right.
While we still can. What a way to go. Yeah. All right, guys. Well,
I've bored you for too long, but thank you
not
for.
Not at all. It's been a
No.
great conversation, Ed. Thank you so much for joining us. And
well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. And you need me, call or text or something. And
yeah, we will totally do another episode on maybe some plans on how we're going to get out of this mess.
Well, I think solutions is a big problem, and I think that's, you know, what are you going to do about it? And for example, on the medical side, I don't have a clue how to get out of the medical mess. But
I think about that every day.
Yeah, and I think that that's something, and maybe there's no simple answer to it, but it's got to be better than driving people into bankruptcy.
Absolutely.
And you know, middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
But that's for another day.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, you guys have a good night, and we will talk to you guys later. I'm just going to press stop. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I
Do
want
the
to thank
outro.
everybody for joining us on the While We Still Can pod. Take
Bye.
care. We'll see you later.
Bye now.